Minasama konnichiwa. As I have been introduced, I'm not going to go too deep on that, but my name is Jaime Valles. I have the honor, the privilege of leading AWS, Asia Pacific and Japan. I joined this great company almost 9 years ago. I started in a journey in Latin America, and I have to tell you how proud I am, how happy I am of being here with you today. In fact, the first time I actually came to Japan on a business reason was almost 12 years ago. And at the time, I was leading Cisco, Asia Pacific, Japan, and China. And it was an amazing experience because I know how committed the Japanese industry, Japanese people are committed to quality, to reliability, to customer obsession, to customer experience. And it is impossible to talk about a successful financial services industry without talking about that. And that's what we're going to be doing today across over 10 sessions in the different breakouts. We're going to be talking about innovation, how technology enables business transformation. We're going to be talking a lot about reliability and everything that is mission critical, resiliency, security that allows us to meet the regulatory environments. And what we have learned as AWS over the many years that we have been working with the financial services industry. AWS fully understands the importance of the financial services industry. You are an agent of economic growth. It is impossible to perceive or imagine successful economies without a strong, committed to quality, committed to the population, a strong financial services industry. We fully understand what it means in terms of regulatory requirements, in terms of customer experience, in terms of always available, and in terms of security. And that is what we're going to be sharing with you today in this first ever Financial Services Industry Symposium in Japan. And I want to congratulate the Japanese team. I want to congratulate Suruta-san for making sure that we give you the best of what AWS has to offer you in terms of driving this transformation, in terms of driving this continuous innovation journey that you're starting, enabled by the cloud. I want to summarize the key messages that I have for you today in 3. The first one is our commitment to Japan. Japan is one of the largest organizations in the world for AWS. As I have the responsibility of leading Asia Pacific and Japan, I can tell you how committed we are and also how much time we invest in Japan in order to learn from you, continuously invest in you, and make sure that we work together as we drive the transformation together with you. And a statement of that is the over 2.2 trillion Japanese yen investment that was announced last year. And as you're going to be listening today, you're going to talk about where we're investing in terms of Gen AI, in terms of Bedrock, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of talent, in terms of people. And it is our objective to share why that matters. Because it is a fact, and that is the second message, that we are undergoing a major transformation in the IT industry. A major transformation that was enabled by the cloud and that has been accelerated by Gen AI. Over the last 24 months, we have been talking a lot about Gen AI. It is a fact that is driving that innovation. But when you see what enables Gen AI innovation, you're going to realize that it's underlying in the cloud. It's underlying in the scalability that the cloud provides. It's underlying in the reliability and availability that the cloud provides. It is relying on the security and responsible AI that the cloud provides. And most importantly, it relies on the data that allows GenAI's applications to make the right decisions, to inference based on that data in the best way possible. That is what AWS has. As the most experienced provider of technology in the cloud, we are convinced that for financial institutions, the innovation that GenAI and the cloud provides, combined with our experience, can enable better solutions, better experience for all your customers. And we're going to go very deep to review all of that today as we are here. And as I mentioned in terms of the commitment to Japan, you see what we're doing around Anthropic, what we're going to be launching in Osaka, but also what are we going to be doing in terms of cryptography, what are we going to be doing in terms of incident detection and response solutions in Japanese for all of you. Because we fully understand that customer experience is not only the technology infrastructure, it's all the mechanisms that allow that service, that quality to happen. Again, that's a lot of what we're going to be doing today, but that's all supported by the commitment to the country, to the industry, and to make sure that we deliver all the regulatory needs that you have today. I said I have 3 messages. First one, our commitment to Japan and our commitment to the FSI industry. Second, as I already mentioned, all the investments that we have. But let me finish with one that for us is very important. We fully understand that innovation, the journey to the cloud, is way more than technology. It's a cultural transformation that is enabled by that technology. But at the end, who are the ones that make that innovation happen? All of you. Amazon in general, AWS in particular, has always been very committed and fully understands that the journey to the cloud is a cultural transformation enabled by the technology. It is the people that makes it happen. GenAI can do great things, but at the end, it is all of you, your teams, that make it happen. And it is a commitment to continuous experimentation, to continuous innovation that allows us to make the most out of the technology. So what we are committing to you is to invest in the infrastructure, to invest in the best tools and systems and services to make that happen, but also to share with you the best practices that we have learned all over the world in the many years working with the largest leading financial institutions in the world. We're going to share that with you because at the end, it's you that make it happen. And our call to action, our invitation over this day, you're going to see is all around inviting you to continuously experiment, to continuously innovate, to try and learn after your different experiments so you always deliver the best experience for your customers. There is no way to use the technology and transform unless we have our customers' experience as the main and most important goal. This is what we're gonna be talking to you all across this day. And let me finish with something that really matters to me. In addition to the commitment to the country, in addition to the commitment to the financial services industry, in addition to the commitment to share everything we have learned over the many years, it is a commitment to you as leaders, because we want to have a long-term partnership that allows us to together innovate and make the most of all the technology that is available so you can drive business transformation for your institutions, for your customers, for your communities. We strongly believe, as I said, that the financial services industry is an agent of change and economic growth. That's the opportunity that technology brings us today. The opportunity to drive Japan's growth acceleration, Japan's innovation acceleration and growth, leveraging technology, but most importantly, leveraging your talent, your people, your experience. And to finish, I just want to thank you for the trust you've put on us, reconfirm our commitment to you. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you.
Thank you, Jaime. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm John Kane. I lead what we call the market development efforts for AWS and financial services globally. And my team has the pleasure of working with our financial services customers on a global basis across all our financial services segments through banking, insurance, capital markets, and payments. And what I'm hoping to do here today is share with you, particularly from a lens of mission-critical systems and how our customers are using generative AI, on what's going on from a global perspective outside of Japan. Now, I've been here at AWS for 7.5 years. But prior to coming over to AWS, I worked at JP Morgan, and before that at NASDAQ. And I ended up at NASDAQ through an acquisition of a company they had made. And that startup was a heavy user of cloud infrastructure on AWS. And it was interesting to see, even back then, when NASDAQ acquired the firm, how it re-looked at using cloud, how it built the governance, security, and control guardrails around that usage that startups typically didn't do. The hard part for me to remember is that was well over a decade ago. And there's been over a decade worth of adoption of financial services using AWS. Now, some of those early startups that we first thought about are household names. How Robinhood transformed trading with zero-fee structures, how Coinbase kind of established the cryptocurrency markets, how Stripe transformed payments, how Nubank in Brazil opened up new banking avenues in Latin America. But equally during this time, your peers in the industry, the more complicated, heavily regulated entities, have been equally successful. The Goldman Sachs's, the JP Morgan's, the HSBC's, the Itaú's, and the NASDAQ's have been successfully using AWS systems. And it's not important that they were running on AWS. It's the systems that they were running on AWS that were so critical. It was the core banking platforms that are now common in the industry. It's the claims processing and core administration systems in insurance. It's the trading platforms, and it's the real-time payments rails that support the industry. Now, our ability to do this hasn't been an accident. It was over 8 years ago that AWS created a separate focus, the first of its kind from an industry perspective inside of AWS, to focus on financial services. Now, we were very fortunate. We were building on top of an engineering excellence that came over from our experience at first running Amazon.com. And as AWS built out its highly resilient, secure infrastructure, it took those lessons and applied them to our own services. Equally importantly, we instilled the culture of being customer first and obsessed with what our customers needed. And the vast majority of what we built was directly from the feedback of our customers in financial services. We also invested globally in the expertise necessary to help our customers be successful, building out teams that specialize on a global basis from a compliance and regulatory perspective, knowing that those burdens are unique in financial services and that other large, complex enterprise customers did not have the same needs. We understood that we needed to make those investments with our partners from systems integrators and ISVs to make sure that we were giving the industry the choice of build versus buy across the value chain. And then most importantly, it was taking that experience and then feeding it back to make sure that we were iterating to provide the ideal environment for financial services to build mission-critical applications. And over the last decade, you've seen, Jaime mentioned how we've built payment cryptography systems in the cloud, how Goldman Sachs helped innovate from an encryption perspective, how we've launched new services from a security and compliance perspective to make those burdens easier. And as we take the experience across our customer base, we allow our customers in the industry to be more innovative. One of the things that I think have seen change in the industry is that increasingly financial services are being delivered very much the same way AWS delivers cloud services. Financial services on demand, via API, when you need them. The transformation of the industry from banking as a service, payments as a service, allow us as an industry to innovate more quickly. Now, it's critically important for us to invest in our customers to build that out for the industry. I'll talk a little bit about the mission-critical applications NASDAQ has moved to AWS a bit later. But as part of their transformation, kind of moving their back office systems and then eventually their core trading applications to AWS, they're also a technology provider to market and market institutions. It allows them to spread that knowledge out so other participants in the market can benefit from that experience and knowledge. Similarly, Goldman Sachs looked at innovating in the asset management arena. It realized it had a core expertise in managing, collecting data, and then providing pricing and analytics on top of that. They found new ways to kind of monetize those core capabilities within their firm, and they worked with us to help distribute that out to the industry, both making their data available to AWS customers and allowing AWS customers to leverage Goldman Sachs data. We see this increasing across the industry. JP Morgan has done something quite similar with its Fusion platform, bringing that data capability to a broader universe. Bloomberg offers real-time data in the cloud, but also a Swift bureau for payments, and the ability to provide fixed drop copy networks to connect to network participants on a global basis. We see Visa doing cross-border payment services available through the AWS marketplace. And increasingly, these partnerships allow firms to build out a global financial infrastructure at ever faster paces of innovation. And it's not just the partnerships and the investments that we're making from an industry perspective, but it's also the ones from a technology perspective as well. We continue our long-term relationship with NVIDIA, bringing on their new Blackwell processors to the AWS infrastructure, helping integrate their optimized libraries into SageMaker, our machine learning platform, and then integrating Nitro, our security platforms, to provide virtualization, making sure we have that ideal full stack to help accelerate generative AI investments. Jaime mentioned sort of our investments with Anthropic, making Anthropic the best performant and cost-effective large language model platform available through our Bedrock services. And what this is allowing us to do is bring a whole new set of services to the financial services industry. But none of that matters unless those services are sound, reliable, and resilient. And everyone in this audience knows that we all have to be responsible stewards of the financial services infrastructure. We firmly believe in making the mission-critical applications in the industry not just work, but work well, is critical to the success of the industry as a whole. And we're not just interested in moving those workloads to the cloud. We want to make them better. We want to provide the operational flexibility and scale that allows you not just to run your business as you do today, but drive innovation within those services. And so I want to kind of highlight some underlying principles on why we think AWS is the best place to run those mission-critical applications. As I mentioned, we had that decade of experience with Amazon.com, even before starting with AWS, and our infrastructure is built fundamentally different, with resilience in mind. Our approach to building regions and availability zones, data centers within those regions, is different from our peers. Our regions are truly isolated from each other. Even within our availability zones, there's been an incredible amount of time spent making sure that disruptions in any one doesn't affect the broader ecosystem. And probably equally important, it's the culture around how we operate that service, which is fundamentally different. Our service teams don't just build, but also operate the services that they run. They are absolutely intrinsically linked to making sure they're providing secure and resilient services. And with the experience that we have, the practices around launching, deploying, and managing those services lead to the highest operational resilience of any cloud provider. Now, what that does is it allows our customers to take that leap to run critical applications on AWS. Standard Chartered, for example, used to run its core banking platform on premises. Tier 1 system for them, their core transaction engine for banking, designed to do 1 million transactions per second with 99% uptime. They wanted to move that to the cloud to take advantage of those native AWS services like Aurora that provided that extra level of resilience, but also gave them the ability to scale and innovate more quickly. They use that same process to bring SC Pay, their payment services, to the cloud, as well as Nexus, their banking as a service, to AWS. And it's not that important that those things can run on AWS. It's how it helps change the user experience at the end of the day. When Standard Chartered launched Mox, its digital bank in Hong Kong, it was able to do it in 18 months. The user experience was different from what they had previously provided. They could onboard a customer through a mobile device, verify the user's identity, do the KYC checks, do an initial credit analysis, and then actually issue a virtual credit card in under 3 minutes. And that ability to run critical applications in the environment where you get the most innovation and the fastest pace of change makes the ability to satisfy our customers exceptional. Now, sometimes we're just dealing with core migrations that are stuck on legacy platforms. MassMutual, the US insurer, is a great example of this. They had made software investments in their key policy administration applications, which were the core of their business. Most of those ran on mainframe, and in particular, they were targeting 2 that were provided by DXC. DXC, in working with AWS in our mainframe migration program, was able to take that application that used to run on ZOS and move that with micro-focus frameworks to AWS. Not only was there a dramatic save from a cost perspective in getting off the mainframe, what they found is the pace of application development and their ability to get those applications into production rapidly accelerated. Fidelity, too, faced challenges in leveraging its legacy technology. Their core trading platform was mainframe-based. And as their business changed, as retail trading volumes exploded through a number of things, the move to fractional share trading, which meant there were smaller trade values, but more volume. The move to zero-fee trading, which increased trading volumes as well. And then some of the meme trading that happened around the pandemic meant they saw transaction volumes increased 4 to 6 times over just a 2-year period. They felt they needed a better way to be able to manage the change that was happening in their business and at the same time take the opportunity to modernize the business they were in. Now, this was what they considered a tier 0 application. Target 100% availability. They worked with AWS to build an application that actually ran live in 2 of our regions. It could take orders in either of those regions, and in all imagined failure scenarios, still continue to operate. We helped them build their own chaos testing network so they could test all the failure scenarios and make sure that what they had built could stand up to any conditions. And they had perfect visibility to every order in the system, something they had not had to the same degree previously. They were able to move to an environment where they could scale their trading platforms overnight just by looking at previous days' trading volume. And they got out of the long-term planning to make capital expenses in a legacy platform just to support their own business. I mentioned earlier that NASDAQ had been a long-time AWS customer, and 2 years back had announced an extension of their relationship with AWS over the course of 10 years. They wanted to move their most critical platforms, their exchanges, to AWS-based technology. They had already built an operating model for all the supporting systems, the billing, the reporting, the surveillance. But they wanted to unify that when it came to their exchanges. Now, these are some uniquely complicated workloads from both a performance and regulatory perspective, but we understood how critical it was, not just to NASDAQ, but to the industry to be able to run these critical workloads. We did custom development around our Outpost platform to customize it to meet the needs of an exchange, both from a performance perspective, but also from a resiliency and not being disrupted during operating hours. Over the course of the last 2 years, NASDAQ has actually moved 3 exchanges, 2 options exchange and a fixed income exchange, that are running in production in AWS. And sometimes the investments aren't just technical. AWS has made a commitment to help our customers from a regulatory perspective. Like the NASDAQ implementation, the Options Clearing Corporation wanted to move its core systems to AWS, those systems that would settle all options trades across the United States. To do so, they needed to convince their regulator that this was a wise plan. And they publicly filed what they were planning to do and opened it for comment. And as the SEC came back with questions, we were able to help the OCC both answer those questions and then also change the way we provide some of our services to address regulatory concerns, provide extra visibility, and even think about different contractual terms. We as an organization are fully committed to running these regulated workloads in AWS and are willing to make the investment with our customers to make these systems as successful as possible. Now, these are just a fraction of the mission-critical systems that are run on AWS today. There are national real-time payments rails that are running. Itaú moved its real-time payments infrastructure in Brazil to AWS. Over 20% of the market is supported on that infrastructure from a payments perspective. We saw core banking providers hosting SaaS solutions in the cloud, as well as core policy administration systems. And connectivity to cards networks are available in AWS. We have and have seen our customers take the most challenging workloads and be successful having them run in the cloud. Now, from an innovation perspective, as opposed to resiliency perspective, as Jaime mentioned, there has probably been no topic that has been as top of mind over the last 2 years as the impact of generative AI on the financial services industry. Now, it's not surprising. There are very few single technologies that have the ability to be as disruptive. From everything on how we market to our customers, how we acquire them, how we onboard them, and how we drive down the operational costs of serving them. Being a regulated industry, though, we very much see our customers focus on enhancing the productivity of their staff, not replacing them. Explainability is a key component of being able to offer advice and make decisions in financial services. And that's not an area where Gen AI excels, but it does excel in what's most important, allowing financial services firms to make the most effective use of data at scale. And that ability to leverage data is really the differentiator for financial firms. It's one of the things that led Bloomberg to actually test building its own large language model. They had over 40 years of curated data that they understood had unique value. And they wanted to see if that data could actually help build large language models that were specific to financial services, being better at answering questions about financial analysis, analyze the sentiment of news, extracting financial entities from documents. And so they leveraged SageMaker, our machine learning platform, to actually build this. And the results were, it actually is better. We continue to see customers experiment, particularly in the payments area with fraud, in actually building their own large language models for very customized usage. And we see for those customers that have large data skills, this is still a potential differentiator from the technologies that are out there. Actually, at our New York summit, Bloomberg announced that they were actually going to do a second version of this and publish the research once again like they did with their first. And we're excited to see what they can do in the marketplace. Now, most of our customers, though, aren't looking to build their own language models. They want to leverage services like AWS Bedrock that provides access to large language models on a more on-demand basis to transform their business. And a good example of that is Bridgewater, the asset manager. They have a rich set of data to enable their research analysts to look for different investment opportunities in the marketplace. However, accessing data, especially across a corporate enterprise, can be complex. And in many cases, analysts would have to go to programmers or developers to write the scripts to get the data to provide the insights. What Bridgewater showed is they could write a large language model on top of Bedrock that allowed someone to use simple communications and just ask a question. What would be the performance of the Nikkei 6 months after a US election where the party in charge changed? Instead of having to know the data infrastructure at Bridgewater, you could just ask that question and it would actually generate the Python code that would yield that result. Not only did it save developer time from a productivity perspective, it allowed researchers to get answers more quickly and do their jobs more effectively. NatWest had a different goal in mind. It wanted to personalize the way it communicated with customers to increase the number of customers that they could solicit for their products. And so they took an approach where they took a language model and asked it to do a customized marketing message for one of its customers based on what they knew about them. And it would create, actually, this very interesting email, one that tended to violate a lot of the controls and practices NatWest had put in place. So they would take that output, run it again through a large language model and say, how does this message violate our company policies or corporate standards? And then from that, suggest a better way to write this message. And then they would have a human actually review at the end for appropriateness and then use it to market to their customers. When they did this, they found they got a 4x click-through rate from their targeted communications, and they actually saw 9 times more signups from an account perspective as they communicated with their customers. And that way to actually kind of personalize communications is something that large language models do particularly well. And then from a unique case of onboarding, Athene is a US insurance that does reinsurance. And one of the challenges it has is that when it wants to do a reinsurance bid, it has to go to customers and get the data necessary to determine whether they can bid and whether there's interest from a customer perspective. However, that data can be complex. And historically, their customers would all have different formatted data sets. Some single files, some multiple files, some Excel, some mainframe. And they would take almost 2 months of just doing the process of looking at customers' data and then mapping it back to their own data standards so they could price the business. Athene's using large language models to actually look at data that it's never seen before and have the large language model actually provide the business requirements to map the data from the customer's format into their own systems. And then from those business requirements, it actually writes the Python code necessary to actually onboard that customer. Now, it still has a developer and a BA look at those intermediate stages, but even then, they have the ability to query those documents to understand the source of that information. What they have found is that process has moved from 2 months to 2 weeks. Not only does it allow them to serve more business more quickly, it's an indication to the industry that a lot of the complex data movement that we do, either to migrate systems or break down those silos within our organization, that generative AI really has the ability to transform. Now, we're also now just beginning to see some of the more use cases in the industry that have a more compelling return on investment. NASDAQ just recently announced as part of its market surveillance product that they're using generative AI to reduce the amount of time that researchers need to investigate market abuse alerts. And if you've ever been through this process, whenever a system determines a possible concern, a human has to investigate, collect information, then make a determination of whether they should file a report with a regulator, or they should say, no, actually, there's a valid cause for that. By using large language models to collect that information, help make that determination, and then actually create the regulatory filings, they help take a third of the time off that process for a human regulator. We've actually seen better results in the anti-money laundering space, where NASDAQ's Verafin organization has actually shown a 70% decrease in the amount of time necessary for an investigator to spend investigating an alert. And then GenPack has seen something very similar, 60% in those areas. So that ability to take complex internal processes that are heavily data-driven, that are not structured data in its nature, and then automate those processes are an area that we're continuing to see. And I'd be remiss not noting that the ability to unlock transcribed data, particularly from a call center perspective, has become quite powerful. The ability to take a conversation at a call center and actually summarize it is something generative AI does really well. And then evenly more importantly, once you have those call summaries, you can actually understand why your customers are calling or how to have them avoid calling you again, either reaching out or providing your call center operators more targeted communications. And we've seen both Principal Financial Group in the US as well as Ally do that effectively. And so generative AI is slowly becoming embedded throughout the financial services workflow to help generate real business returns. Now, all these things don't happen unless someone moves forward. And each of these companies that I've talked about previously took advantage of AWS's commitment to the industry and our ability to work through both the most complicated workloads within financial services, not just technically, but from a regulatory perspective, to drive change in their organization. Equally importantly is that AWS is that innovation platform. And particularly in the generative AI area, please leverage us. One of the customers I've personally worked with, Sun Life, the Canadian insurer, as they went through their generative AI use cases, they actually worked with us to help quickly screen those. They had 14 ideas that they thought were good fits. They worked with a process we call experience-based acceleration, where we had experts in the room help them evaluate what those use cases could be. We found a third of them just weren't really good fits for generative AI. A third were great, but the economics were better in traditional AI, and a third we helped them get to production. So please, take the next step, help drive the future. And thank you so much for your time today. And I want to turn it over to Ruta-san, who can actually share what's going on and how you're driving the future in the Japanese financial services market.
皆さんこんにちは。 これから日本語でお話ししますので、リラックスして聞いていただければと思います。今日は本当にお忙しい中、この会場までおいでいただきまして、誠にありがとうございます。また、平素私どもの AWS のメンバーがですね、大変お世話になっておりまして、この場を借りて御礼を申し上げたいと思います。ありがとうございます。今日はですね、私の方で今、ハイミーがトップの立場としていろんなお話を差し上げましたけれども、その後グローバルの動向をジョン・ケインがお話しました。私はちょうどこの AWS に来まして5年目に入りました。この5年間でですね、何をやってきたかというのを少し総括させていただいて、そして次の2030年に向けて我々の AWS が何を皆様にお手伝いできるかといったところをお話しさせていただければと思います。私ちょうど先ほどお話ししました通り5年前に来たわけなんですけれども、もともと AWS2011 年に東京リージョンを日本で開業いたしまして、サービスを開始してちょうど13年14年目になるところでございます。で当初は低コストインフラということでクラウドをお使いになるお客様は大変多かったわけなんですけども、2017年前後からメガバンク様、それからカード会社様、損保会社様が先行してですね、私どものクラウドをお使いになるようになりまして、この当時になりますと低コストインフラに加えて開発の生産性を上げるツールとしてインフラとしてクラウドを使っていくと、こういう使い方が非常に多くなってまいりました。そしてちょうど私が着任した頃ですね、どうしてもまだ我々の活動自体がお客様のインフラを中心としたご提案形態と申しますか、ご支援内容が中心でございましたので、これをもっとお客様のバリューですとか、それからお客様の課題にですね、焦点を当てて、イシューに焦点を当ててご提案をするような体制に変えていきたいということで、ちょっと大冗談ではございますけれども、2025年に向けて戦略的なストラテジックパートナーになっていきたいということで、もっとトップラインですとか、それからスピード、それからアジリティといったようなですね、お客様の課題、イシューにフォーカスしてバリューをお届けするというところに焦点を当てて営業活動を展開してきております。ここにございますように、多くのエグゼクティブの皆様とお話ししている中で、大体右にございますような4つの大きな課題に集約されるということを認識しました。一つはもう既存のビジネスモデルが成り立たなくなってきているということと、それから2つは新型変化ですね、顧客の接点が大きくあって、エンドのお客様との接点がものすごく変化してきた。それから3点目、今日も大きなトピックになっておりますけれども、よりレジリエンシー感染でいかにですね、障害を早く回復していくかと、障害はもうどうしても起きてしまいますので、そこに対してどのように早く回復をしていくかというところにフォーカスを当てると。それと昨今一番実は多くご相談を受けるのが4点目でございまして、トランスフォーメーション、イノベーションを起こす人材をどうやって Amazon を育成して育てていってるんだと、こういうところをですねご相談いただく。カルチャーですとかトランスフォーメーションといったところでですね、私どもがお手伝いするというケースが非常に多くなってきてまいりました。それではこの本当にですね、お客様たくさんのすでに数百を超えるお客様の中からですね、いろんな事例が出てきておりますので、少しずつご紹介をさせていただければと思います。まずビジネスモデル、新たなビジネスモデルをクリエーションしたケースということでございますけれども、まずは JPX 様でございます。昨年にカーボンクレジットの取引市場を開設されたのを皆さんご存知の通りだと思います。約 3.5 ヶ月というですね、短期間でこのクレジットのトレーディングのシステムの開発をされまして、昨年の10月から稼働し始めております。もともと1年以上かかるプロジェクトをですね、AWS の標準基盤上に開発していただくことによって、1年以上かかるプロジェクトを4ヶ月以内で開発を終えられ、また直前ではですね、今年私どもの AWS 環境上にデータレイク、巨大なデータレイクを作るプロジェクトをスタートさせていただいております。J レイクというプロジェクトでございますけれども、ご案内の通り JPX はマーケットのデータ長年にわたり 多量のデータを持っておられます。そういったデータをですね、市場内外のオルタナティブデータですとか、そういったものと組み合わせることによって、新しいデータサービスを展開していくと。当然 AWS は国内だけではなくてグローバルに展開しておりますので、国内のいろんなマーケットのデータといったものを海外、特に ASEAN を中心にですね、そういった情報を提供していくということで、そういうデータビジネスを新しいビジネスモデルとして構築されるといったようなところのお手伝いも今まさに差し上げております。JPEX 様はデータ COE、データのですね、センターオブエクセレンスのチームを構築されて、そのチームがそういったデータサービスについて検討されておられるということでございます。それからもう一つはカード会社の JCB 様でございます。JCB 様はですね、AWS にかなりのワークロードをもうすでに移行いただいております。その中でも3割近いですね、3割ぐらいのコストの投資の削減効果、加えて直近では今年リリースされましたけれども、ここにございますようなデジタルバリュープラットフォームということで、提携される企業様、提携先の企業様のスマホの中にですね、スマートフォンのアプリケーションの中に JCB 様のカードの決済機能であったり、それから送金の機能であったり、いわゆるバースに似たものですけども、そういったカードの機能を API を通して提供するようなですね、企業様に提供するようなサービスを今年から開始されております。こういったところも私どもの AWS 環境上でお作りいただいているというところであります。さらに2つ目の新しい顧客の接点でございますけれども、住友生命様、最近テレビで2つ必ずよく聞くものがありますけれども、一つはバイタリティですね。これが住友生命様が提供されているサービスでございます。私どもの政治メーカーと呼ばれる ML マシンラーニングのソリューションですね。そういったものをお使いいただきまして、この130万人を超えるようなユーザーの方にスマートフォンのアプリケーションを通じて事前にですね、その方のいろんな健康状態ですとかそういったものを把握して症状の重篤化を防ぐようなサービスを提供されると。こういった加入者一人一人のですね、健康状態を管理しながらいろんなサービスを提供するところに、このバイタリティというサービスを通じてリーチをされておられる。またここにはちょっと書いておりませんけども、先般私ども6月に大きなイベントサミットというものを開催させていただきました。そこではSMBC 様のオリーブのお話を磯和専務様から頂戴いたしまして、実はオリーブも AWS 上で今稼働しております。こういったですね、新しいビジネスモデルを私どもの AWS 環境で作っていただくというケースが数多く出てまいっております。さらには顧客接点系ということで、新型肺炎の後、コールセンターのオペレーターをですね、一箇所に集めることがなかなか難しくなったということで、私どもの Amazon が使っておりますコールセンターのソリューション、Amazon Connect というソリューションがございますけれども、このソリューションを在宅で例えばやりたい、コールセンターの業務をやりたいというようなご要望を含めですね、そこに対応するためにこのコネクトというソリューションを展開させていただいています。すでに日本でも40を超える金融機関のお客様にお使いいただいておりまして、もうすぐもう50近くになるんじゃないかなというふうに思います。最近ではここにございますように数多くの地方銀行様には私どものこの Amazon のコネクトというコールセンター、リモートからクラウド環境上でコールセンターやれますので、物理的な装置が必要なくなるということで、非常に今引き合いが多くいただいております。続きましてレジリエンシーのパートでございます。今日この後のセッションの中で NTT データ様からキャフィスのお話を、デジタルキャフィスの話を頂戴いたします。実はもうすでにキャフィスはですね、ここにございますように6年目ということで、全てのシステムがキャフィスで動いているわけではないんですけども、加盟店側の接点のゲートウェイの部分というのは全て AWS で稼働しております。月間約1億件というカードの決済のトランザクションがこのキャフィス上に流れておられる。それを AWS 上で今処理しているということで、本当にミッションクリティカル中のミッションクリティカルと言ってもいいのかもしれませんけれども、こういったシステムがすでに AWS で稼働しております。 さらにはこれも大変私にとっては嬉しかったんですけども、今年の4月から SBI 証券様のシステムが全面的に AWS に移行されました。ご案内かと思いますけども、 SBI 証券様のトランザクションというのは、ここにございますように1日あたり約360万件、ピークタイムでいうと取引残高、取引量でいうと2兆円を超える取引量になります。1300万件という口座を今お抱えになっておられますけども、非常にですね、ハイパフォーマンスを要求されるトランザクションシステムでありまして、こういったシステムもすでに AWS 上で稼働するようになってきているということでございます。さらには実はこれ昨日ですね、メディアブリーフィング、メディアの方を集まりいただいて、私とそれから SBI 様、福島銀行の加藤頭取においでいただきまして、プレゼンテーションをさせていただいたんですけども、この7月の3連休を使いまして、フルバンキングのシステムを AWS でリリースさせていただきました。おかげさまで今のところ安定稼働しております。日本初のコンテナを使ったマイクロサービスを化したコアバンキングシステム、預金、それから為替等々ですね、本当にコアの部分をこの AWS 環境上で動かしていただくということで、来年には地方銀行の島根銀行様の稼働がもう確定しております。福島銀行様のシステムをそのまま持っていく形になるわけなんですけども、すでにロードマップ上はですね、10近い金融機関様に乗っていただくようなロードマップになっておりまして、新しいクラウドネイティブの環状系が本当に動き出したということで、非常に大きなターニングポイントに来ているのではないかなというふうに思っております。この話も今日この後のセッションで、今日はSBI の CTO の木村様がおいでいただいておりますので、木村様から詳細なですね、ご説明をいただく予定になっております。さらにもう一つ、これも私にとっては大変嬉しいプロジェクトであったんですけども、マスタートラストですね。日本最大のマスタートラストでございます。日本株主データサービス株式会社。三菱住友信託銀行様とみずほ信託さんの共同でございますけれども、ある意味国内のですね、約6割の証券代行の業務を司っておられまして、このシステムも実は6月から AWS 上でフル稼働しております。ここにございますように、ちょうどこの6月7月が株主のピークタイムでございますけれども、約1300万件のですね、日当たりのトランザクションが走るということで、ある意味これは巨大なバッジのシステムなんですが、そういった先ほどのオンラインのトランザクションだけではなくて、こういったバッジのですね、システムも AWS 上で稼働をし始めているということで、かなりテクノロジー的には非常にいいところまで来ているのではないかなというふうに思っております。それからすでにもう発表させていただいておりますけれども、静岡銀行様ですね、地銀の上位行でいらっしゃいますけれども、静岡銀行様でもいよいよもともと富裕層のメインフレームのシステムをダウンサイジングされまして、2021年から Linux 環境の分散環境で環状系を動かされておられますけれども、そのシステムを AWS 上に移行いただくということで、2年前からですね、技術検証のプロジェクトに着手しまして、ちょうど昨年末にですね、多分いけるだろうということで、今年からプロジェクトが立ち上がるということでございます。一応2027年をサービスインの稼働を予定しております。またこの後ですね、静岡銀行様から別途アナウンスが出るというふうに聞いておりますけれども、このプロジェクトも一つ大きな、先ほどの福島銀行さんの環状系に加えてですね、大きな一つのクリティカルポイントになるのではないかなというふうに考えております。それと最近一番ですね、ご相談を受けるケースというのがこの人材の育成の部分でございまして、どうやってそういうイノベーションを起こすようなことをやってるかというところなんですけども、私どもいろんなお手伝いを差し上げております。当然ながら私どものクラウドのスキル、 IT のクラウドのスキルといったところのお手伝いということで、ここは日本生命様ですね。日生様のクラウドデイという形で日生のグループ会社の皆様にも集まっていただきまして、いろんな勉強会ですとかテクノロジーのスキルをですねトランスファーするようなセッションをさせていただいて、またすでに500名を超える私どもの資格取得をいただいております。またここには書いておりませんけれども、みずほフィナンシャルグループ様ですと今はもう1500名というですね非常に大きな資格取得者を抱えていただいておりまして、金融機関様でもですね私ども資格取得をどんどん進めていただいていると。さらには私どもカスタマーオブセッションと申しますが、お客様に対してですね事業を展開する中で常にお客様を中心に置いてという発想でビジネスをやらせていただいておるんですけども、その中でワーキングバックワーズということでデジタルイノベーションプログラムというものを展開させていただいています。これは我々が Amazon 本体がですね AWS もそうなんですけども、新しいサービスを提供する際にメソドロジーを持っております。それを開発するメソドロジーがございまして、そのメソドロジーに従ってですねいろんなアイデア出しですとかイノベーションを起こすためのいろんなサービスをご一緒にですね考えさせていただくということで、先般も大和総研望月社長、それから山梨中央銀行の古谷とですねトップダウンで私どものこういったアプローチを採用するというご判断をいただきまして、大和総研様のピッチコンテストですとか、それから山梨中央銀行様の同様のですねコンテストの中で私どものこのメソドロジーを導入いただいて新しいサービスを作るというようなところもお手伝いさせていただいております。はい、以上ですね、私どもこの4年間の総括と申しますか取り組みについて数多く非常にハイトラフィックなパフォーマンスを要求されるトランザクションですとかバッチ処理系のシステムといったところでお話をさせていただきました。続きまして生成 AI のことを少しお話をさせていただきたいと思います。本当に数百に上るですね POC のプロジェクトが現在走っておりまして、その中でもやっとですね本番へ私どもの生成 AI をご活用いただくケースが出てきております。一つは野村証券様でございまして、広告審査業務のところでありますとか、それから日生さんの場合は統合報告書っていうことで企業さんが提出されます統合報告書の中からですね、例えば ESG 絡みの情報を拾っていろんな情報の集約を行ったり、さらには SBI 生命様ですと、一番はまりやすいところだと思うんですけども、コールセンターの業務ですね、ここに生成 AI を入れてオペレーターの効率化を図る。さらにはセゾンテクノロジー様では社内のテクニカルサポートということでエンジニアの方の質問に生成 AI が答えるようなところにこの私どものツールを当てはめていただいていると、そういう事例が数多く出てきております。私どももうすでに皆さんご存知かと思うんですけども、3層のアプローチを取っておりまして、最下位層としてはもう本当にチップのところから提供しております。インフルエンシアですとか、それからトレーニアムと呼ばれるような AI 専用のですね ML 専用のチップの提供、さらにはアプリケーション自体を開発するためのツールということで、私どものベッドロックに加えてですね、冒頭にハイメの方から話がありましたように、最近一番好評いただいておりますアンソロピックのクロードの 3.5 ですね、こういったLLM をご提供すると。さらには直近で言いますと AI のアシスタントになります Amazon Q ですね、これはコードの開発であったり、さらにはデータの分析のところを対話形式でサポートしていくようなツールもリリースさせていただいております。こういったものをうまく活用いただいてですね、推進をいただけるのではないかと思います。もちろん我々はこういったツールの提供だけではなくて、ユースケースの選定からさらにはカスタマイゼーション、そしてファインチューニング、そして運用するところの全てをお手伝いできるようなプログラムをご用意しておりますので、今日は一つ一つは触れませんけれども、こういったエンドトゥエンドでソリューションをご提供できるというところで、他社との差別化ができるのではないかなというふうに思っております。 それから最後ですけども、レジリエンシーの取り組みというところに少し触れさせていただければと思います。私5年目に入ったというお話を差し上げましたけども、この4年間、最も力を入れてきたのがこのレジリエンシーの取り組みでございます。私ども一昨年にですね、金融のレファレンスアーキテクチャというものを発表させていただきました。このレファレンスアーキテクチャは物理的な再階層、私ども東京に4つのアベラビリティゾーン、大阪に3つのアベラビリティゾーンということで、リージョン2つ抱えておりますけれども、その上にですね、金融のお客様に求められるグレードのガバナンスですね、を聞かせていかなければいけないということで、セキュリティですとかレジリエンスを高めるためのツール群をご用意しております。その2層目に当たるのがそこでございまして、これを使っていただくことによってですね、ある程度、例えば今回ですとフィスクの12班の方に準拠する形でアーキテクチャのチェックができたり、その要求されるレベルを担保するようなことができるようになっております。さらには3層目ということで、それぞれのベストプラクティスを提供させていただく。先ほどジョン・ケインの方から海外のミッションクリティカルシステムのマイグレーションのお話がありましたけれども、そういう中で私どもとしてどのようなやり方をするのがベストプラクティスなのかというのを学んできております。そういう情報を日本のお客様にお届けするということで、今回展開をさせていただいて、それから機関系のところにサンプルアプリケーションというふうにございますけれども、先ほどの福島銀行様のケースでも、実は東京リージョンがアクトで、大阪リージョンはスタンバイ形式で動いています。ただし、広域災害が起きた場合には、東京リージョンから大阪リージョンにスイッチして動き出すと。基本的には通常は東京リージョンの中に複数4つのアベラビリティゾーンがございますので、そのアベラビリティゾーンの中で障害はほとんどの障害は自動的にリカバリーできるような設計になっているんですけども、広域災害が発生して関東地域が全滅した場合でも大阪側へ切り替えると、そういうことによってトランザクションを継続させるということができるようになっておりまして、その期間系の切り替えの部分ですねをシミュレーションした参照系だけではなくて更新系のトランザクションシミュレーションするようなサンプルのアプリケーションを同時に今回ご提供するということで今考えております。で、特にですね、昨今日本のお客様でメインフレーム系からのマイグレーションが非常に多くプロジェクトとして立ち上がってきておりますので、その中でのメインフレームの連携、一気に全てを移行するというのは非現実的でありますので、徐々にマイグレーションしていく中でメインフレームの連携、それからハイブリッドのアーキテクチャをどのように構築したらいいかというようなガイドラインもですね、本年中にご用意してそれを提供するというような段取りで今動いております。またちょっと言い忘れましたけども、特に昨今金融庁様もフォーカス当てられているサイバーレジリエンスですね、このサイバー系の攻撃に対する対応についてもご一緒にいろんなガイドラインと申しますか、そういったものもご提供するということで進めさせていただいております。このレジリエンスについても準備段階から運用段階までですね、エンドトゥエンドで私どもご提供するということに、いろんなサービスをご提供することが可能でございまして、特に最後に少し触れさせていただきたいのがエンタープライズサポートの拡張版ということで、私どもサポートのエンハンスメントで、冒頭にハイミの方からございました AWS のインシデントディテクション&レスポンス、我々 IDR と呼んでおりますけれども、この何か障害が起きた場合、いかに早くですね、障害を回復していくかという中で、プロアクティブに事前にですね、お客様と例えばこういうログが障害発生する可能性がある場合、こういうログがスレッシュホールドを決めていくつ出たら、事前に私どもからお客様に情報を提供するですとか、通常のエンタープライズサポート15分という時間以内に初動を起こすことになっているんですけども、それを金融機関様のグレードに合わせてですね、5分以内に初動を取るといったようなサービスを展開させていただくと。 来月の1日から日本語でサポートを開始させていただきます。さらには2つ目として AWS のカウントダウン、それからカウントダウンプレミアムということで、今回の福島銀行さんでもこれをお使いいただいたんですけども、稼働の前の段階ではその障害が起きた時にきちっと切り替わるアーキテクチャになっているかどうか、きちっとリカバリーできるアーキテクチャになっているかどうか、それから稼働中は私どもがリアルタイムでリソースを監視しまして、そのお使いいただいているリソースに異変が起きてないかどうか、異常が起きてないかどうか、そして稼働後は福島銀行様のケースでは2週間だったんですけども、2週間私どもリアルタイムで全て監視をさせて、問題が起きる前に情報をお届けする、こういったサービスをですね届けさせていただくということで、より一層日本のお客様の基幹系のシステムのご要望、高い可用性を担保するところをお手伝いさせていただくというところまで今やっと持ってこれたのかなと。本当に一歩一歩なんですけども、少しずつ、環状系、本当にバックオフィスのシステムですね、そういったところのシステムを動かせていただけるような環境ができてきたかなというふうに思います。はい、今これまでの4年間のですね総括と新しいサービスを少しお話をさせていただきました。ちょうど来年がビジョン2025の最終年度でございまして、ちょうど私ども今2025年以降 AWS がどう変わっていきたいかというところを今取りまとめている最中でございます。詳細な施策は来年の春に発表させていただこうと思うんですけども、まず私どもの今頭にあるのは、オペレーションのレジリエンスがもっと大切だということを一番認識しています。先般規制監督庁の方とお話をさせていただく中で、 AWS さんは今日本の基盤となろうとしている、インフラとなろうとしている。 AWS さんは電気とかガスとか水道だとかそういうものと同じような位置づけになろうとしてきてるんだよと、その責任をちゃんと感じてください、そのようなコメントを頂戴しました。この日本の社会の経済安定した基盤を提供と書いた下にですね、Success and Scale Bring Broad Responsibility という英語がございます。これは私ども Amazon はですね、Our Leadership Principle という16個の行動指針みたいなものを聞かれたこともいらっしゃる方もあると思うんですけども、持っております。その中で新たに2021年に追加された2つのうちの1つでございまして、アマゾン自体は非常に最初は小さな会社だったわけなんですけども、今は全従業員が100万人を超えるような大企業になってきています。その中で我々がビジネスを全世界に展開していく中で、やっぱり我々が課される社会的な責任っていうのが非常に大きくなってきている。この社会的な責任を全うしていくために、やはり安定した基盤を提供していくということが我々の使命かなというふうに思っております。どうしてもこれまではメインフレームを中心としたですね、いろんなシステムの既存のレガシーのシステムに IT の投資額の 70%、80% を使って、戦略的なエリアには 20% ですとか 30% しか使えない環境と、私もその世界で生きてきた人間なんですけども、これをやはりもっと戦略的な投資のエリアにインベストしていくと、さらにそれをやることによって新しいビジネスをいかに早く立ち上げていくか、並行して私どものノウハウであるイノベーションを起こす文化ですとかカルチャーといったものをお客様に人材の育成の観点でお手伝いをする。最終的にはこれを実現することによって日本の金融機関の皆様が高い競争力を持っていただいて世界にですね戦っていけるようになってもらいたいなというふうにちょっと個人的に思っておりまして、私も日本の金融のお客様を担当させていただいて、実はちょうど今年が40年目になります。 40年間ですね、日本の金融のお客様とお付き合いをさせていただいて、これは本当に今私が真に思っていることでございまして、クラウド間違いなくテクノロジーだけではなくて文化だとかカルチャーだとか我々のものの日本人の考え方だとか、そういったところに大きな影響を及ぼすものだと思うんですね。ですからそういうテクノロジーを超えた世界でAWS がもっとお手伝いできるところがたくさんあったらいいなというふうに思っております。ちょうど時間になったようでございますので以上でございます。本当今日はありがとうございます。この後セッションをそちらの方が本番でございますので、ぜひ積極的にご参加いただければと思います。ありがとうございました。